Hi everyone, this is Bonnie Hurd-Smith of History Smiths, and today I'd like to introduce you to someone I think you will find very inspiring. If you're like me, you are always looking for role models and coaches, people who have accomplished great things because we want to know how they did it so we can learn from them. Well, as a historian, I like to find role models in women's history because history gives us the opportunity to look at a person's whole life, decisions they made along the way, people who helped or inspired them, how they achieved and lived with success. So the woman I want to tell you about today is Judith Sargent Murray of Gloucester and Boston, Massachusetts, who was the most important female essayist of the 18th century in America, right when America had just become a country, and a whole lot of people, mostly men, were discussing what kind of society we would have. Many of you know that Abigail Adams asked John Adams and the men who were drafting the Constitution to, quote-unquote, remember the ladies, and they didn't, and they should have. Well, Abigail's demand was made in a private letter, but Judith Sargent Murray, on the other hand, wrote an essay called On the Equality of the Sexes that was published in the Massachusetts Magazine in 1790, and it claimed female equality, as you can tell from the title. And this was the first public claim for female equality in America by Judith Sargent Murray in 1790. Can you tell that I'm proud of her? And in this essay, she argued with wit and humor that if women seemed less intelligent, it was only through lack of education and nothing else. Of course, she's right. Judith went on to write dozens more essays in magazines and newspapers, most of them under a male pen name, so that people would listen to her and not dismiss her. And as I said, she became the most important female essayist of the new republic. She was also the first woman to self-publish a book, paving the way for the next generation of American writers. She was the first playwright, male or female, to have a play produced in Boston, and she was an accomplished poet. She helped found a female academy near Boston, and she was one of the early Universalists in America, one of the founding Universalists in America, which meant going against her town's established church, but it also meant that she was part of the first ruling for freedom of religion in America, which is really huge. Judith was the wife of the first Universalist preacher in America, John Murray. She was a mother and a very hands-on educator for the children around her. Finally, Judith Sargent Murray is the only 18th century woman we know of to keep letter books in a consistent manner, and these were blank volumes into which she would make copies of the letters she wrote to family, friends, business and political acquaintances like George Washington and John Adams. How she achieved what she did can boil down to, I think, 5 main things. And I should tell you that I am editing her letters for publication. I have 5 books out with more on the way. I have been living with this woman for many, many years, and I've been inspired by her for many, many years. But back to how. Okay, first, I have to point to her Universalist faith that included the equality of souls in God's eyes. She believed deeply that God had a purpose for her and that not using her God-given talents was basically letting down God. Second, she was from a very self-confident family. The Sargents on her father's side, the Saunders family on her mother's side, they were wealthy, cultured, and politically active. And because Gloucester was a major seaport on the Atlantic Ocean, they saw themselves as citizens of the world, and they played big. Third, she believed in herself, and she had courage, and she acted. Time after time, if there was an obstacle in her path, and for women in the 18th century, there were plenty of obstacles, she found a way around it and triumphed. Now, an early example of this was how, as a young girl, she made use of the Sargent family library to initiate a lifelong process of self-education. She had been taught very basic reading and writing skills, but she craved more. She also watched her younger brother being tutored for Harvard, so she knew darn well that there was a lot more to learn. She essentially, starting from a very young age, gave herself a liberal arts education under her own initiative. Just quite exceptional. Fourth, she was incredibly talented and smart. I mean, she just really was. The list of her achievements is very long. Fifth, she had a tremendous support system in her parents who let her use the family library, in her father who showed off her early writing, and then with her husband, the wonderful John Murray, who really saw her as an equal and was incredibly proud of her. I have come to admire Judith Sargent Murray more than I can say. In case you couldn't tell, I admire her spirit, her talent, and her determination to make a difference, especially as an American woman. She makes me so proud because there aren't many individuals we can point to and say, she changed the world, and Judith Sargent Murray is one of those people. So there is so much more I could say, and I invite you to learn more about her at my Judith Sargent Murray website, which is jsmsociety.com. I invite you to purchase the brief biography I wrote of her, which is available as an ebook at historysmiths.com, so you can download it right now, or the physical books of letters I have published, and I've also published a 6-part lecture that I gave. That's up on YouTube, so feel free to watch that if you want to learn more about the love story between Judith Sargent and John Murray. So thank you for listening. I hope you have enjoyed meeting the remarkable Judith Sargent Murray. Please don't ever forget her. This is Bonnie Hurd Smith of History Smiths, signing off.